And the gentleman that we have tonight is not only a great artist, but he has a project, which is the subject of the music tonight, which is really a great one. And it's the music of a beloved American composer and singer, Bill Withers. And his name is Jose James. He's got a great new project with Blue Note Records. And the whole thing tonight is part of a pre-record insiders tour of select dates. So you're hearing something that they actually just came from the famed Capitol Records in Los Angeles, where they've been working on recording. That's one of the most famous record studios in the whole world. He's going to talk about that. Come on up, Mr. Jose James. I think it's just live.
Okay, which one am I? Oh, there we go. I'll take this one.
All right.
This is where I'm standing tonight, so.
All right.
This is my spot.
Did you see the article?
I saw it online.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
There's a nice story in today's Aspen Times when you get home, if you want to grab it and take home some more. But you're going to get the good inside look right now. So,
hey, y'all.
So, Jose, I had the pleasure of being here last night and hear your band. And I heard you once before. I'm a great admirer. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about how this project came to be? Because let's just start right there.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for coming. And this is my first time in Aspen, so it's been awesome. This is my second day. It's amazing. I'm already sad about having to leave on Sunday. Somebody asked me in an interview last week, when was the first time I heard Bill Withers? And I honestly can't remember not hearing Bill Withers. He's somebody like Bruce Springsteen, or, he's just always on. He's everywhere you go. He's, for me, woven into the fabric of American culture on such a deep level. So I think I do a thing in my live show. I don't know if you guys are familiar with me, but there's a lot of improvisation. So sometimes we'll go and play a song, and then we'll stay on the end of a song and just be grooving, on a one chord, And sometimes a little Marvin Gaye might come up. Sometimes a little Al Green might come up. Sometimes a little Bill Withers might come up. And over the course of, I want to say, like the last 5 years, the Bill Withers part kind of split off and formed its own medley, actually. So we would kind of play 3 or 4 of his songs in one 20-minute sort of like powerful jazz extravaganza. It was really interesting. And it became a high point of the show. It wasn't recorded. People knew they could only get at the live thing, and they would go crazy with it. And of course, being a young guy, I'm recording everything on my iPhone, putting it on social media. So it kind of was this legendary thing. I found out Bill, if you guys seen that documentary, Still Bill, it's a great documentary about him when he was 75. He is now 79, and I found out he's turning 80 this year on July 4th. And I said, you know what? This is a great time, because I'm from Minneapolis, and we just lost Prince. And I'm sure you guys know over the last 4 or 5 years, we've just lost a who's who of some of the most talented artists in the world.
A lot.
And it's really kind of hit me. And I said, I think it's time to pay tribute to somebody I think is relatively underappreciated for the level of his writing talent, one of our greatest writers while he's here. So originally it was just a live project. I just wanted to do some live shows. And then my label boss, Don Was, who is also, that's his side job, being president of Blue Note Records. His main job is producing John Mayer and the Rolling Stones and Bonnie Raitt and people like that. And he heard about it, and he said, well, I have to have it on Blue Note. And I said, well, I'll do it on one condition, and that's that you produce. And he said, you got a deal. And next thing I know, he's getting a text from Ed Cherney, who is one of the top 3 engineers in the world. His first 2 albums he engineered on coming out of school were Off the Wall and Thriller by Michael Jackson. That's where he started. And I find myself in, like you said, last weekend in Capitol Records, Studio B, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but I think there's only...
Tell them some of the people that were on the wall.
Oh, Frank Sinatra cut all of his big band hits there. on the same mic, by the way, that I was able to use.
Wow.
And it's so cool because they actually have the wooden box from that the mic lives in. And he liked it so much he wrote Frank on it. And so I had everybody like touch the box, you know, like it was a holy relic. But you know, Nat King Cole recorded the Christmas song in there. His Steinway piano's in there. You know, Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, you name them, they have recorded there. And to walk in there and feel that energy was just incredible. It was amazing. Yeah.
So how far into the recording process of this is it's not done yet, I assume you're still...
It's not done yet. We tracked all of we call it the rough basically, because it's not mixed yet. So I sang live with the band, and I have the option of, we call it a rough vocal, which means if it sounds rough, then you'll do it again later, basically. But they sounded amazing. And so what I'm going to do right after this, I go back to LA on Sunday. I go in the studio on Tuesday, not Capitol, but one of my other favorite studios. And I'm going to record some overdubs and a couple vocals. And then Don Was is producing some strings and some horn sections. And I'm trying to get Layla Hathaway on the album, too. I don't know if you guys are a fan, but she's incredible. Yeah, I want to hear her on Just the Two of Us. I think she would. I saw her on the cruise, that we were on the Blue Note cruise, and she just killed me. I mean, I love her to death, but she's one of the most talented singers. So it's really, it's an all-star, magical kind of thing. My bass player, Ben Williams, who you saw.
Who was a former student here at the Jazz Academy.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
About 6-7 years ago. What a talented guy.
He's so amazing. And he broke my heart because he couldn't make the session because he was out with David Sanborn. Yeah. So I called Pino Palladino, who was the best bass player in the world, and he said, yeah, I'll be there. And then my old friend Chris Bowers, who I consider him like the next Quincy Jones. I mean, he's pretty much given up playing jazz, and he's only doing film scoring now. That's pretty cool. And so he came in, and it was just incredible. And what I will say is that I now know the difference between great and amazing. All of my albums I would consider great, you know, personally. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put them out. But this album is amazing. This album is like the best studio with the best musicians, the best producer, the best engineer, on the best gear, and with the best vibe.
It's coming out
September 28th. Yeah.
Okay.
Right in time for Grammys. Yes.
Just the Two of Us there was a great version of Just the Two of Us that happened. Well, there's many of them that are out there, but that we had here at the Jazz Cafe with the guitarist Diego Figueiredo and Cyril Amé. They were a duo together, and they did a version of Just the Two of Us, guitar and vocal, that was absolutely over the top. It became actually, as it has for me, because it's such a great song, but they did a great version of it. So let's talk, I want to shift a little bit about how you treat this music. So as you'll hear tonight, this is a band of jazz musicians at heart, but who play a really wide range of music, and you bring that sensibility to this great material, which you're faithful to, but then you do a lot of things. And I read something in this interview that I liked that I thought might be a good place for a takeoff for you to expound on that to everyone a little bit. He said, we have a funk underbelly with a jazz top coat.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think I was driving down to the Kennedy Center when I said that. You know, it's true. It's everybody's a trained jazz musician, you know, which I need in my band, because if I want to go to outer space for a second, I need people to go there with me.
Follow you.
Yeah, yeah. And at the same time, I need people who can play Bill's music correctly. And a lot of times in jazz, you know, it's interesting because I've worked with a lot of great older musicians, like legends, you know, Chico Hamilton, McCoy Tyner, Junior Mance. And those guys actually were a lot more open-minded than a lot of the guys a little bit older than me who kind of say, if it doesn't swing, it's not jazz, which really surprised me. Because for me, jazz always meant whatever you want it to be, if you could prove that it was jazz, you know. I feel like that's what Miles Davis did, you know. But there's a lot of guys in jazz who don't want to sit there and play a song as simple as Grandma's Hands, which is a blues.
Right.
And I've even simplified it further by staying on one chord for half of the song. And it takes an incredible amount of discipline to just stay on one chord and make it feel good. So I'm sort of, as a band leader, with my vision, tasked with trying to find guys like Nate Smith who love playing a groove as much as they love taking a solo. But then, of course, you know, there are room for solos. And, you know, you'll hear James Francis tonight, who's 22. I mean,
Keyboard player.
This guy.
He's got
There's a
big
story
talent.
that Miles Davis told about Herbie Hancock when he joined the band, and he said this guy was so brilliant, he played the entire piano all the time, everything. And finally, Miles said, "Why do you play so much?" And Herbie said, "I don't know how to stop." And he said, "What should I do?" And Herbie grabbed his hand. Miles grabbed his hands and said, "Take him off the piano," you know? And James, he is that brilliant too. So, you know, I give my band space to let them take it. But I think that the crucial thing is that emotionally, they remain connected to the essence of the story of Bill Withers. Because we're basically treating this like, almost like Ella Fitzgerald's songbook is the closest thing I can think of when some
meaning
of the...
it faithful to the essence of the song. Is that what you're...
Yeah, faithful to the essence of the song, and also doing it in a way that, because some of the songwriters were alive when she did the series. And when the earlier jazz, as you know, 40s and 50s, you know, people were coming down to give Nat King Cole songs that they had just written because they were the hit makers of the day. So it's a different connection when the songwriter is alive, I find, rather than, you know, me singing Mac the Knife or something.
Sure.
I know Bill Withers is going to hear this at some point, probably in LA at the Hollywood Bowl. Yeah. I'm going to look up, and he's going to be there, and I'm going to have
didn't you
own it.
Before this happened, didn't you meet him and talk about things?
Oh, yeah.
So
I
tell
met
us
him.
about that.
Well, I mean, you know, for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, there is a very short list of people who I am generally in awe of. Aretha Franklin is one, who I sang for twice, which was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. And thankfully, she liked it, which now I'm like, okay, wow. I mean, there are just certain people whose opinions of you can make or break you, just to be honest. You know, if Aretha had not liked my singing, that would have devastated me forever. And, you know, meeting Bill was the same, you know, and especially since I had devoted a year of my time researching his music prior and some of his life, trying to get into the headspace of, you know, I didn't want to show up to this meeting just like, hey, man, I want to sing some of your songs. You know, that's like meeting Stephen Sondheim and not knowing every single one of his works, you know. I treat it in the same level. So we were at a very famous place in Hollywood, Musso and Frank's, at the Frank Sinatra table, and it was this whole thing. Don Wiles was there, and he showed up so cool. This guy is 79. He drove himself from his house. No management, no team. He just pulled up. He was wearing like normal stuff, casual. He said, hey, bud, how you doing? And just disarmed us all. He just showed up I've suddenly sat down, and we hung out for 3 hours. And the first thing he did was tease me. But the thing about Bill is that he has like a poker face, so you don't know if he's joking. And I had just met him, and I said, hey, excuse me, I'm just going to go wash my hands. And he said, oh, Jose's the kind of guy who got to go wash his hands. I don't usually eat with people who need to wash their hands. And we're all like, oh, fuck. And then I went in the bathroom and I realized, oh, he's just fucking with me. Then I came back and sat down, and we were this close. He didn't talk to me or look at me for an hour and 20 minutes. And I was like, he hates me. Oh, well, I don't know what I did. I guess I went to wash my hands and I fucked it up. But what I didn't realize was that on his level, someone like Bill Withers, their showing up is already a cosign. He doesn't leave the house to do anything. He hasn't performed in over 30 years. I mean, he gets crazy offers, I know.
We invited him a few times
He could do
to Jazz Aspen.
anything he wants on any stage with any orchestra or lineup or band for any amount of money. He's just not interested. So the fact that he came out, and what I didn't know, but I found out later, is that he already knew about me through the former president of Blue Note Records, Bruce Lundvall, who wanted us to connect, and we just never connected. So he already had vetted me. He knew me. And after an hour and a half, he turned to me and said, hey, man, look at this. And he pulled out his iPhone and just started showing me photos of him with really cool people, starting with him and Justin Timberlake and then John Mayer. And it went back in time till it was him with Muhammad Ali and James Brown. And then we started talking about him being best friends with Donny Hathaway and the role of artists in society. And then he just took me on like a 2-hour sermon of how to walk through life with an artistic temperament and sensibility and maintain your dignity, which was like, wow. And then the other thing is that he could have been a stand-up comedian. He's so funny. He's so funny. And I left feeling like I had really met maybe the first genius person to person, it's our luck that he decided to sing and write songs. But I mean, I got the sense that he could have actually done anything, And the last thing I'll say about that meeting was that I knew less about him afterwards because that guy is a total enigma. I asked him one question. I got the nerve up at about 2 hours and a half in to ask him, because he was relaxed, about, he doesn't talk about his history. He doesn't talk about influences, people he listened to, all the kind of normal stuff. Hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from I studied from and then none of that stuff. And I asked him, hey, Bill, I'm just curious, how did you get into the guitar, man? Stop, silence. Long silence, and everyone's like, oh, fuck, Jose fucked up. He asked him a question, and he looked at me just totally for a while, and I was uncomfortable, And he said, well, you need harmonic accompaniment as a singer, you know that. And then just turned back and went on with what he was saying. That was it. That's all I got out of him in 3 hours about his history. And, God bless him, man. It's like I've never met somebody who actually got out. We talk about crime movies or thrillers, the bank heist or the music business or the drug deal, all the get out, got out of the game. He made his own demo. He got signed. He made the albums he wanted. The second somebody told him he needed to change his voice, he said, fuck you. Then he went to another label, recorded one more hit, just the two of us, as a fuck you to his old label, got another Grammy and a whole nother pile of money, and never looked back. And who's ever done that? No, the only other person who's done that is Sade. And even she has been convinced to come out of retirement a couple times. So you really have to take your hat off to his integrity, I think. And that's what I really walked away from. I have actually met somebody who has the highest amount of integrity, the highest level of integrity, at least with his artistry, of anybody. And it was incredible.
And his music, if you had to summarize his message and maybe why now it seems to resonate in our world, it was really just he had a message of love and positivity that's maybe absent today.
Yeah,
It's just we don't.
the thing
There
that
isn't an
struck me.
artist really like him right now.
Oh no, I mean the thing that struck me about, because I've poured through all of the print and video archival footage I can of interviews, and I don't know if you guys know this, but he had 9 years in the Navy, and he got an engineering degree, and because he was a black man in America at that time, he couldn't get a job when he got out. The only job he could get was welding toilets to aircrafts, commercial aircrafts. And he did it, and he never complained. And all the while, he's writing like Ain't No Sunshine, and for years. And two things really struck me because people tried to lead him into kind of traps a little bit. And, or even the first thing, he's on the Johnny Carson show, and they're asking him, hey, man, you welded toilets for a living. And he's like, yeah, it was a great job. No, like, he just like, man, it was a great job, paid my bills, and, I really have respect for working people. And it was like, wow, how refreshing. Then the other cool thing is he is from Slab Fork, West Virginia,
Wow.
which I think when he was living there,
Doesn't sound very nice.
man, I mean, we're talking about,
Not a place to visit.
Cold
Not like
country.
Aspen or.
yeah.
No.
I mean, Aspen has more people than Slab Fork. I mean, Aspen is beautiful. Slab Fork, I'm going to go to Slab Fork. Slab Fork currently has 198 people living there. And I think when Bill lived there, it had about 500, black and white. His grandfather was born a slave, and his whole family worked in coal. And this is like the, West Virginia coal, you know what I'm saying, hard living. And I remember seeing in that documentary, they said, how was the racism? And he said, you know what, man, we all worked in the coal, and at the end of the day, everybody was black. And he was just like, that's the way it was, man. We were all poor. We were all working in the coal mine, and fuck it. And I just thought, wow, like this guy has a different approach to life, and then you look at his songs, and for the most part, they are about honoring memories, your own personal memories, which I find as a man to be very cool, to think back about the love you lost in a positive way, There's a song, Hello Like Before, which I'll do tonight, where he says, you're looking so well, like, I never thought I'd see you, but actually, I knew I was going to see you someday, and, I still love you. And it's like, wow. Or Grandma's Hands, just a song about how much he loved his grandmother because of who she was, what she did for the community. Or, of course, Lean on Me, which is like the ultimate friendship song. And, I mean, it's just so cool, that he's somehow able to encapsulate such joy in like a song like Lovely Day. It's pure sunshine, and to be able to, as you saw on the cruise and last night, to be able to command such a great band and also to just be like in charge of Bill Withers' hits. And I take ownership of them fully because as far as I'm concerned, they belong to me right now. He's the songwriter and I'm the interpreter. And he's cool with that, I'm not trying to get big-headed. We talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
And it's so awesome because I have this great responsibility of telling his story in 2018. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, you all do a great job, and you tell his story, but with the unique perspective of jazz and the other things that you bring into it, and that's why I personally thought it was so special. And I'm sure you're going to get associated after this Blue Note record comes out. You'll be doing this for a while, and you won't get to the bottom of it probably because it's such great. It's just music that's going to last, just like of the popular side of music. It's just Beethoven lasted for a long time for different reasons, but in 200 years, Bill Withers, they'll be playing Bill Withers music, and probably your version will get your interpretation will get in there, I'm sure, because it's spot on. It's great. So let me ask you something else, because Bill Withers is so special, but you were doing other things necessarily before you had the Bill Withers segment, and then so did you. How did you just exactly get yourself to the jazz? Was it music broadly, and then you sort of found yourself becoming a jazz person by identity, or did you not really ever quite see yourself in the jazz box? You obviously appreciate other kinds of music. So how did you get to, before Bill Withers?
Yeah. Well, jazz, I was born in 1978. So the music that I came of age with in the late 80s through the 90s was mostly hip hop. That was like the cool music that everybody listened to. And every producer, especially in the 90s, sampled either jazz albums or like rare funk albums, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, back in those days, when you would buy the CD and or the vinyl and spend a lot of time with it, you know, so I would read the liner notes, and I had no idea what a sample was, but I would read, you know, like, okay, who wrote this? How does this work? And I would see like produced by so and so, sample clearance by Sony, whatever, you know, Roy Ayers, and I'm like, oh, this is a piece of another thing. I had no idea. So then I would go to the record shop. I had a great music store called the Electric Fetus, Minneapolis, Prince's favorite record store. And I would say, hey guys, like, do you know anything about some guy named Miles Davis or some guy named, you know, Roy Ayers? You know, I'm 14. And they're like, yeah, of course, man. And I remember being so intimidated because, you know, in hip hop, it was new. So there would be one CD per artist, maybe two. First time I got to the jazz section and like looked at Duke Ellington or Miles Davis, and they're like 40 CDs, and I'm like, oh, how do I start? And I remember picking up one Miles Davis CD, and they only had 2 songs on it, and each song was like,
Right.
you know, 30 minutes,
Hour,
yeah.
right, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is I want one with like at least 14 songs and to get my money's worth, you know. So I just, you know, when I finally realized what jazz was, because it wasn't taught about in the school I went to, I kind of got angry. It's like, wow, there's this whole beautiful musical heritage of America that we don't teach this in school. What? So I got mad, and I just started from Louis Armstrong, and I worked my way diligently forwards until I got to John Coltrane, who just totally changed my life forever. And that was the moment where I think I found my space as a jazz singer, because, you know, up until that point, everything had been done. Everything had been covered. Everything had been written. And, you know, it was a cool time because Blue Note had just signed Kurt Elling, and they had just signed Cassandra Wilson. So they were sort of like the new face of jazz. And I thought she was cool because she was writing her own stuff, and Kurt Elling was, you know, using
Just
poetry.
cool.
And he was cool, you know. And so it was kind of like, oh, maybe I can find my own little corner of this history, because I wanted to be part of something bigger. And I also was a horrible rapper. I wanted to be a rapper, and I was so bad. So I was like, well, let me try jazz.
So who are you? Well, let me throw a question at you, which you may or may not have.
This feels like a tough one.
It might be. Some people find it tough, but most find it kind of. You think about it, and I'm sure you'll have a couple of answers. So just imagine for a minute that one day somebody that you knew really well said, "Jose, we got to talk." It's maybe family or just someone and said, "Look, I have some news. You got to get packed, and you and your wife are moving, and it's to a desert island, and it's only going to be you two. It's going to be okay because there's a house there for you, and there's some electricity, and there'll be food."
Sounds great so far.
It's just going to be the two of you. Well, hold on.
Are they here tonight? Or
No, but the thing is that you can only, and you are going to live for eternity, but you can only take 5 CDs with you. So, what 5 CDs or albums or whatever could you really just live with and just be complete? You know, that would be your whole universe of the sounds that you know.
Well, first I'll answer this question for all the married guys here. I have to pick some music that my wife loves because I want her to be happy. So,
for eternity, that's probably
for
a
eternity.
wise idea.
So
Happy wife, happy life.
she loves. She gets 2. She gets 2. She gets 2. I think I get 2. She gets 2, and then one like
You have
mutually.
to agree. You have to agree.
Yeah.
Very
So
wise,
her
man.
2. She loves Graceland. She loves Graceland.
That's a beauty.
If she's ever in a bad mood, I just put on Graceland.
And this year is the final Paul Simon
yeah.
tour. If you
And she's
haven't-
gonna go on her birthday in L.A. in the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When is it?
In the spring.
Yeah, nice.
This last show.
Nice.
So yeah, Graceland, and I think Hedgera, Joni Mitchell, would be her other one.
Ooh.
Yeah, those are her
Ooh.
2
Yeah,
favorites.
does your wife? Is she a professional musician or just loves music?
She's an amazing songwriter. She actually
Oh.
wrote on 2 of my albums.
Oh, nice.
Toured with me. So I'm a really lucky guy. She's super talented.
Nice. Okay, that's her too.
That's her too. The one that we share together is a recent album, but I think it won the Grammy for Best Album of the Year a couple years back. Beck's Morning Phase, which if you guys don't know, that is the most. I have no idea what he's talking about on the album. No idea. Like I've listened to that album at least 500 times. I have no idea what any of the songs are about. But the sound is incredible. And somehow he managed to encapsulate the feeling of waking up and starting your day in this album. It's incredible. I listen to it every single morning. It's how I start my day every day.
Okay.
And we love that together. So that would be our morning. Now for my 2, I made it really tough on myself, of course. Oh God, why did I do this? Now this is impossible. This is totally impossible. Probably Kind of Blue, because that's just one of the greatest albums of all time.
It is.
And to me, that encapsulates the entire history and future of jazz. Like that's like everything. Every single thing about jazz is in that album.
For those of you who don't know, that is Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. Yeah.
Oh my God, now we're
That's
down to one album.
That's a classic and more.
Now we're down to one album. Well, I think selfishly, my favorite album of all time is by Marvin Gaye, I Want You. Because Marvin Gaye is my favorite singer. Marvin Gaye gives me every single thing I want as a singer. Like he's like a spa for my soul. You know, he's joyful, he's painful, he's sensual, he's sexy, he's vulnerable, he's strong, he's brilliant, you know. And that particular album was the first album. I'm going to show you guys what a music nerd I am. That's the first album that Berry Gordy at Motown allowed one person to produce the entire thing. Wow. Every other album was just a bunch of singles put together because he wanted the competition. He wanted everybody to be fighting, and he wanted to get more great songs out of Smokey Robinson and to spread them out, you know? So I actually met Leon Ware, who produced that album and wrote that album, and we talked a lot about Marvin, and he said, you know, you remind me of me, and Marvin would have loved you, man. And to me, to meet the person responsible for one of my favorite albums, there's something really beautiful in there. And now I feel depressed because I just left so many albums back home. Yeah, but I think those would sustain me. And being a musician, and my wife's a musician, we could probably do half-ass versions of the rest, you know.
Sure. So who are you listening? You mentioned Beck in the morning. What's happening? who is performing today that you, what artist of any genre, not just, although I'd be personally interested to hear what jazz artists or jazz vocalists you dig, and then just what musicians in general that are out there right now, and you go, this person has something that resonates.
Yeah. Well, I think Cecile McLaurin Savant is like, she's, in terms of the young singer, she's the best.
Yeah, she was here last year. I don't know if anyone saw her. She's the gal that wears the big white glasses. There's a lot of pictures of her out there, and she's just very, very, very sophisticated, beyond her years.
Yeah.
Talent.
I mean, she's incredible.
Yeah.
She's the future of jazz singing, you know. I mean, in terms of like jazz singers around today, you know, God, Rochelle Farrell she'll destroy you. Bobby McFerrin, man. I mean, I wanted to be
Bobby
him
McFerrin
forever.
Bobby McFerrin, I don't know if anyone was here when we had him about 10, 12 years ago. And yeah, so
go.
the story,
There you go.
Yeah, most people don't know, but that day was unbelievable. He came, this was for our June event, and he got in the day before, everything was fine, and then that morning he went and took just a little hike, like this beautiful June day, and he got bit by a spider.
No way.
And the spider, he had this bad reaction of intense fever, had to get taken to the hospital. It was very nip and tuck as to whether he was even going to perform, and he finally did decide to go out and perform, but he still had a fever, and he was wrapped up, and it was just one of the saddest, scariest things. And he went out there, and he did, you know, he made it almost through an hour, but it was just extraordinary, and that never happened to anybody here. We all felt terrible, but he did too. But he made it through. But yeah, he's a real talent.
I gotta throw out Diane Reeves.
Yeah, of course.
And I had the dubious honor of having to follow her once, which was horrible for me. And I didn't know her.
It's horrible for any singer.
Yeah, I didn't know her personally. I loved her. It was the opening night. Now, I'll tell you how bad this was for me. This was the opening night of the Detroit Jazz Festival about 6 years ago. So 40,000, free festival. I don't know if you guys have ever been. It's incredible. 40,000 black people downtown, free. And the theme was, it was tribute to Marvin Gaye. So Christian McBride was the artistic director, his band, plus the big band. And it was me, Layla Hathaway, and Rashawn Patterson. I was the first singer. And our opening band was her. And I was like, Diane Reeves up there killing it.
Yeah.
Just destroying it, like the best, technically the best, creatively the best. And she smoked. And it was like an hour, and then she finished, and then she just stood right next to the side of the stage like this. Regal, and I just was like, well, I will go on and I will do my best, you know, and it ended up being cool. You know, and I listened to a lot of the new R&B that's kind of like this. It's almost like how it was in the 90s, like it's like singing, half rap, half singing. Like SZA, SZA. Kalani. It's a lot of young women, and it's so cool just to see.
Are you a fan of Janelle Monáe?
She's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. There's just this whole new generation of.
Have you heard Andra Day?
Yeah.
She's a talented one. If you haven't heard Andra Day and you like that kind of music, she's a big talent. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much talent. Michael Kiwanuka too is awesome. I don't know if you guys know him. He's from London. He's like a great soul singer. Sounds like he's straight from the 60s. You know?
Really? Say that again?
Michael Kiwanuka.
Michael Kiwanuka.
Yeah.
You know, there's another guy from London. I just heard about Ola Onabule. You know him from Nigeria? Lives in London. He's a soul singer. He'd be right up your alley. You would like him, I'm sure. Just heard it the other day. I was like, well, London has a whole Nigerian connection of that music and people living there.
And Gregory Porter, of course, my label mate. Got to
Yeah.
shout him out.
Gregory was here a couple years ago. Did you see him? Up in the art museum. And as Jose is mentioning Diane Reeves, I hope if you're a fan, you know she's coming this summer. We're going to have her on the roof of the Jazz Cafe. That's pretty exciting. She's an old friend. Diane we've been presenting her for over 25 years, starting in the very, very early years of Jazz Aspen, and she's a Colorado girl, lady. Well, Jose, it's been great talking to you, and we got a few more minutes. I'm going to just open it up. If any of you have any questions, please.
So the first eight bars, the two of us, is, I mean, the minute the first two chords, you know what that song is.
Yeah.
What is it? Why, I mean, can you analyze that or tell us why that works so well?
I think, I mean, in a way, I have to give credit to Quincy Jones for really bringing in. I think he's really underappreciated for how well he's been able to bring jazz orchestration and harmony into pop and R&B. He's really the one that did it. I mean, he learned from the best. Of course, he was Frank Sinatra's musical director for years, and then he went on to work, produce pop records, It's My Party, you know what I mean? And then, of course, Michael Jackson, And I think everyone learned through Quincy that you didn't have to sacrifice musical sophistication, not complexity, but sophistication, and it could still be commercial. I don't know. I mean, Marcus Miller, you can't go wrong having Marcus Miller on bass either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, there's just something magical about it, and I think it's just one of those things that because of course it's a Grover Washington Jr. record, and I think when jazz musicians take the time to do something that's accessible, it's kind of the best of both worlds, And even that bass line, you know that you've taken a journey already, and you feel like, oh, that's interesting. That's kind of, wow. It prepares you, But it's exactly going back to what we first started talking about. It's jazz musicians who are willing to play pop parts. You know what I mean? It's not just a bunch of stuff. It's a part, and they play parts all the way through. And to me, that's the history of Motown. All jazz musicians, of course, playing with all Martha and the Vandellas and everybody was amazing. That's the history of why Al Green stuff sounds so good. Love and happiness. That's all from a jazz mind. Al wasn't a jazz guy, but the arrangement was. So when you put a jazz mind at the service of a pop record, amazing things happen. That's a great quote right there. Write that down.
Good. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, that's a wrap. We do have to go.
Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in a little bit.
Jose James, good job.